It would not be an inheritance in the ordinary sense. No will read inside a solicitor's office. No collection of jewels passed across a polished table. Not even a formal palace announcement declaring that organizations once associated with Diana, Princess of Wales, now belonged to Princess Anne. And yet, the idea has begun to make a curious kind of sense. Prince William has spent much of his adult life preserving the causes closest to his mother: homelessness, mental health, compassion for people whom respectable society found easier not to see. But William is also the Prince of Wales, the heir to the throne, a husband and a father of 3. His responsibilities are expanding. Princess Anne, meanwhile, has spent more than half a century doing the unglamorous work on which royal patronage depends. So could William entrust part of Diana's charitable inheritance to the one senior royal whose record is measured not in sentiment, but in decades? And would Anne accept a legacy belonging to a woman so different from herself? To understand why that question carries such emotional weight, it is necessary to separate 3 things that are often blended together: Diana's official patronages, Diana's broader charitable legacy, and the personal inheritance carried by her eldest son. Diana, Princess of Wales, was born Diana Frances Spencer on July 1st, 1961. She married the then Prince Charles at St. Paul's Cathedral on July 29th, 1981, when she was 20 years old. Their first son, Prince William, was born on June 21st, 1982. Prince Harry followed on September 15th, 1984. During her years as a working member of the royal family, Diana became president or patron of more than 100 organizations. That number matters because it corrects the simplified picture of Diana as a royal who merely appeared at a small collection of emotionally powerful events. Her program was extensive. She supported hospitals, organizations serving children, homelessness charities, disability groups, arts institutions, and causes connected with HIV and AIDS. She became closely associated with the Royal Marsden Hospital, Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children, Centrepoint, the English National Ballet, and the National AIDS Trust. Some of those relationships were formal patronages. Others became inseparable from Diana because of what she did while she was present. In April 1987, at the height of public fear and misinformation surrounding HIV, Diana opened Britain's first specialist HIV and AIDS unit at Middlesex Hospital. She shook the hand of a patient without wearing gloves. The gesture lasted only seconds, but the photographs traveled around the world. In January 1997, just 7 months before her death, Diana walked through an active minefield in Huambo, Angola, wearing protective equipment marked with the emblem of the Hallow Trust. She was 35 years old. Those images survived because they joined royal visibility to recognizable human vulnerability. Diana did not simply stand beside a cause. She altered the way the public saw it. Princess Anne's method could hardly have looked more different. Anne Elizabeth Alice Louise was born on August 15, 1950, making her almost 11 years older than Diana. She began undertaking public duties as a teenager and carried out her first public engagement in 1969 at the age of 18. In 1970, she became president of Save the Children. That relationship has continued for more than half a century. She visited projects in countries affected by poverty, conflict, and natural disaster, often before such journeys attracted the intense celebrity coverage now associated with humanitarian work. Anne also became the first member of the British royal family to compete in the Olympic Games when she rode in the 1976 Montreal Olympics. Her equestrian experience later informed decades of work with riding and disability organizations. By the time Anne approached her 75th birthday in 2025, she was connected with more than 300 charities, regiments, and organizations. At a Buckingham Palace forum held that June, approximately 200 representatives attended from more than 100 of those bodies. 300 associations, 55 years with Save the Children, more than half a century of public engagements. Anne's record was not built around a single famous photograph. It was built by returning. Prince William stands between these two traditions. From Diana, he inherited the emotional force of direct contact. From the wider royal family, including Princess Anne, he inherited the expectation that public service must continue after the cameras have left. The question, therefore, is not whether William can legally give his aunt possession of his mother's memory. He cannot. The more precise question is whether he might increasingly rely upon Anne to protect the kind of service Diana made central to modern royal life. But one episode from William's childhood reveals why such a decision would never be merely administrative. In 1993, Diana took Prince William and Prince Harry to the Passage, a homelessness charity operating near Victoria in central London. William was 11 years old. The visit was not designed as a grand constitutional lesson. There was no throne room speech and no ceremonial declaration that one day he would continue his mother's work. Diana brought her sons into a place where people came because they lacked secure housing, money, or dependable support. The surroundings were ordinary. That was precisely the point. William returned to the Passage as an adult. In February 2019, he became its royal patron. By then, the organization, founded in 1980, had assisted more than 130,000 people through its resource center, accommodation services, and prevention work. That patronage demonstrated how Diana's legacy actually passes from one generation to the next. It is not automatically inherited with a title, it is chosen. Royal patronages are arrangements between an organization and a member of the royal family. They are not private property belonging to one royal household. Prince William could not gather Diana's former patronages into a bundle and formally hand them to Princess Anne without the involvement of the organizations themselves and the appropriate royal structures. Yet William does possess something less tangible and in practice more influential: the authority of personal continuity. When William accepted his first patronage in September 2005, he chose Centrepoint, the youth homelessness charity with which Diana had also been closely associated. He was 23. That decision was important. William could have begun with an organization carrying little emotional connection to his childhood. Instead, his first major formal commitment reached directly into Diana's public work. He later supported the 2008 Lord Mayor's appeal, noting his mother's association with well-being of women and Orbis. In 2019 came The Passage. In 2023, he launched Homewards, a 5-year program intended to demonstrate that homelessness could be made rare, brief, and unrepeated in selected locations. William was not copying Diana's program engagement by engagement. He was translating it. Royal biographers have frequently noted that Diana exposed William and Harry to experiences outside palace life. One of the most authoritative accounts of Diana's final years came from Tina Brown, whose work examined how Diana combined aristocratic instinct, media awareness, and genuine emotional identification with people in distress. But William's development also occurred inside a family that regarded endurance as the test of seriousness. That is where Princess Anne enters the story. Anne's service has usually been described through quantity. Hundreds of engagements, long journeys, tightly organized days, and short visits executed without unnecessary theatre. Those numbers are impressive, but they can obscure the human discipline beneath them. A royal patron does not manage a charity's daily operations. The value lies in attention, visibility, convening power, and continuity. A visit may attract local press. A reception may bring donors into the same room as volunteers. A letter may recognize decades of service by someone whose work would otherwise pass unnoticed. Anne understands this machinery at a level few living royals can match. She also understands that the cause must remain more important than the royal visitor. That principle was part of Diana's best work too, despite the contrast in their public personalities. Diana generated enormous attention, but at critical moments, she redirected that attention toward people carrying stigma. AIDS patients, those experiencing homelessness, children in hospital, and civilians living among landmines. Anne generated less spectacle, but often created the same result by a different route. She lent institutional credibility to organizations over periods that could be counted in decades rather than news cycles. This is why the possibility of William relying on Anne carries more substance than an invented story about documents being signed behind palace doors. William does not need an imitation of Diana. He needs a custodian capable of protecting the principle beneath Diana's work. The surprising element is that Anne may be better suited to that role precisely because she never attempted to occupy Diana's emotional position. And that difference changes the meaning of the supposed inheritance completely. Diana and Anne were not natural doubles. Diana entered royal life as a young woman whose reserve concealed an instinctive understanding of public emotion. Anne had been born into the institution and had already spent more than a decade performing engagements before Diana married into the family. Their temperaments differed. Their relationship with the press differed. Their presentation of vulnerability differed. Diana often allowed the public to see feeling as it happened. Anne usually appeared to consider feeling private and duty public. That contrast has encouraged generations of observers to place them on opposite sides of a royal argument. Warmth against discipline, modernity against tradition, emotional openness against endurance. The division is too simple. Both women understood that royal status had value only when it could be converted into sustained attention for something beyond the royal family itself. Consider Anne's association with Save the Children. She became the organization's president in 1970 when she was 19. In the decades that followed, she traveled to see its work in Africa, Asia, and elsewhere. Those visits included areas marked by famine, war, and displacement. The journeys were not always glamorous, nor were they designed around the polished imagery associated with state banquets. They required stamina. Diana's humanitarian work produced some of the most recognizable images of the late 20th century, but she too moved toward places many public figures avoided. She sat beside people dying of AIDS when physical proximity still frightened the public. She touched patients whose conditions had become surrounded by cruel myths. She walked through terrain where explosives remained hidden beneath the earth. The techniques were different. The moral direction was not. For William, that shared ground is crucial. He was 15 when Diana died in Paris on August 31st, 1997. Harry was 12, Anne was 47, and had already spent 27 years as president of Save the Children. In the days after Diana's death, William and Harry remained at Balmoral with members of the royal family. Much has been argued about the institution's response during that week, especially the contrast between private protection of the boys and the public's demand for visible mourning. For William, however, the period was not constitutional theatre. It was the sudden removal of his mother at an age when his understanding of her was still developing. That is why the 1993 visit to the passage carries such power. Picture the distance between the two moments. And one-year-old boy walks into a homelessness center beside his mother. 4 years later, she is gone. 12 years after that, he accepts Centerpoint as his first patronage. 22 years after the original visit, he gives an interview explaining how deeply those early encounters affected him. 26 years after the visit, he becomes patron of the passage itself. Memory becomes repetition. Repetition becomes commitment. Commitment becomes an institution. This is the form of inheritance that matters in royal public life. But it also creates a problem. The Prince of Wales cannot be everywhere. William's official position changed dramatically after Queen Elizabeth II died on September 8, 2022. King Charles III acceded to the throne and William became heir apparent. The following day, King Charles announced that William would become Prince of Wales. William's duties now extend beyond his own chosen causes. He supports the king, undertakes national and overseas engagements, works through the Royal Foundation, and prepares for a future role unlike that of any other working royal. He and Catherine, Princess of Wales, are also raising Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Every new constitutional responsibility competes for time with charitable relationships that require more than a name on letterhead. The monarchy faces a wider numerical challenge as well. The number of working royals has narrowed. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip are gone. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex ceased serving as working members of the royal family in 2020. Prince Andrew no longer performs public duties. That leaves a smaller group carrying patronages accumulated across several generations. King Charles inherited the crown with a large portfolio of previous commitments. William inherited the Duchy of Cornwall, the Prince of Wales title, and an expanding national role. Catherine developed a concentrated program around early childhood while maintaining other patronages. The Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh assumed additional responsibilities, and Princess Anne continued. She remained the senior figure whose diary demonstrated what large-scale royal coverage looked like in practice. One town in the morning, a charity anniversary in the afternoon, a military reception later in the day. Hundreds of miles traveled, often with minimal attention devoted to Anne herself. From William's perspective, that reliability offers something invaluable. Anna's legacy is emotionally powerful, but vulnerable to simplification. Without careful stewardship, it can be reduced to photographs, gowns, interviews, and family conflict. The charitable substance risks becoming secondary to the mythology. Anne is almost uniquely resistant to that process. She would not need to reproduce Diana's gestures. She would not need to speak as though she possessed Diana's private intentions. She would not need to claim a special emotional ownership over her memory. She would only need to ensure that service continued. There is also a quieter family connection. Anne was the sister of Diana's former husband, the present King Charles III. She was the aunt of William and Harry throughout the most disruptive years of their lives. She belonged to the structure Diana challenged, yet she also represented the type of public usefulness Diana believed royal privilege should produce. For viewers who remember the 1980s and 1990s, it may feel strange to place Diana and Anne inside the same historical line. Diana appeared to change the emotional language of monarchy. Anne appeared determined not to change her language at all. But institutions survive by combining exactly those forces. One person opens a door, another keeps it from closing. There is a nostalgic image here, though not one preserved in a famous frame. Imagine the handwritten briefing papers prepared before a royal engagement, the names of trustees, the number of beds in a shelter, the date the organization was founded, the details of a new treatment wing, a note explaining that one volunteer has served for 30 years and should not be overlooked. Diana might have entered the room and instinctively found the frightened child, the isolated patient, or the person standing alone. Anne might enter the same room having memorized the briefing and ask the one operational question that proves she has taken the organization seriously. Two routes to recognition, two ways of saying you have not been forgotten. This is the emotional core of the inheritance William could place in Anne's care. But there is a complication. Some of Diana's causes already belong, morally and publicly, to William himself. Passing too much of that work elsewhere could look not like preservation, but withdrawal. The midpoint twist is that William does not need Anne to inherit Diana's patronages, because he has already inherited the most important ones in substance. Centerpoint is the clearest formal example. The passage provides the most personal through line. Homewards converts the inherited concern into a program carrying William's own authorship. His work on mental health also reflects an environment Diana helped create by speaking openly about distress, isolation, and the emotional pressures hidden behind formal appearances. William's inheritance is therefore not waiting to be transferred. It is already active. What Anne could inherit is a different category of responsibility. Not ownership of Diana's central causes, but guardianship of the wider ethics surrounding them. That distinction matters. No credible evidence establishes that William has issued a formal grant giving Princess Anne a collection of Diana's former royal patronages. Patronages are not distributed solely by personal command from the Prince of Wales. Many of Diana's former organizations continued under different arrangements after her divorce and death. Some obtained new royal patrons. Others developed without royal sponsorship. Several changed structure, leadership, or focus over nearly 3 decades. The word inheritance must therefore be understood symbolically, but symbolic acts within the monarchy can shape real behavior. King Charles III undertook a major review of royal patronages following the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Such reviews are necessary because hundreds of associations can become connected to members of the royal family over long reigns. Decisions must be made about which links continue, which end, and which move to another royal. William's increasing authority makes his preferences relevant, particularly where his mother's legacy intersects with his own program. Yet, the decisive insight is not that William would surrender Diana's work to Anne, it is that he could divide the legacy according to strength. William carries the personal testimony. He was the child who entered the passage beside Diana. He is the son who can explain what she showed him. Anne carries the institutional discipline. She knows how to support organizations without converting their work into a permanent drama about the royal family. One preserves memory. The other protects continuity. The inheritance becomes stronger when it is shared. That division would affect several members of the family. King Charles III would occupy the most delicate position. Any formal reallocation connected to Diana would inevitably be examined through the history of their marriage, separation, and divorce. Charles and Diana separated in 1992. Their divorce was finalized on August 28, 1996. Diana died 1 year and 3 days later. A decision involving her former patronages could therefore be interpreted as a family statement, even if it were administratively routine. King Charles would have reason to avoid theatrical language. His reign has emphasized continuity, service, and the consolidation of royal responsibilities. Presenting Princess Anne as the inheritor of Diana's charitable mantle would risk manufacturing a personal comparison neither woman requested. Quiet redistribution would be more consistent with how the palace handles patronage. Princess Anne herself would almost certainly resist sentimental exaggeration. Her public record suggests that she prefers defined work to symbolic decoration. Any new responsibility would have to correspond with an organization's needs and with Anne's existing areas of expertise. That is no small consideration. Supporting more than 300 organizations creates limits. Even an exceptionally busy working royal cannot maintain every relationship at the same intensity. Anne would also understand the danger of allowing royal nostalgia to eclipse the charity. An organization addressing homelessness in 2026 is not operating in the Britain of 1993. Housing costs, local authority pressures, patterns of insecure accommodation, and the complexity of support services have changed. A royal connection may carry historical value, but it must serve present needs. Catherine, Princess of Wales, represents another part of the equation. Catherine has never attempted to reproduce Diana's public identity. Her principal long-term work has centered on early childhood, particularly the importance of the first 5 years of life. Her patronages also include major sporting, cultural, and health organizations. The comparison with Diana remains unavoidable because Catherine holds the title Princess of Wales. Yet, William's reliance on Anne could protect Catherine from being expected to absorb every part of Diana's former role. That would be significant. No individual could recreate Diana's combination of celebrity, vulnerability, historical timing, and instinctive physical communication. Expecting Catherine to do so would be unfair. Expecting William alone to maintain every strand would be impractical. Anne offers another path. Distribute the work without pretending to replace the woman. Prince Harry would also be present in the background of any discussion about Diana's legacy. Diana had 2 sons. William's position as Prince of Wales does not give him exclusive emotional possession of their mother's memory. Harry has pursued causes connected with veterans, mental health, and the fight against landmines. His work with the Halo Trust directly invokes one of Diana's final and most recognizable campaigns. Any suggestion that William could single-handedly grant Diana's complete charitable inheritance to another royal would therefore be misleading. Harry's relationship with the royal family has changed since he and Meghan stepped back from royal duties, but Diana's influence on his public work remains visible. This complication actually makes Anne's possible role more useful. Anne does not need to adjudicate between the brothers. She does not need to declare which son better represents Diana. She can uphold the principle of service without entering the dispute over memory. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis form the final layer. They never met their grandmother. For them, Diana is transmitted through family stories, photographs, public history, and the choices made by their parents. William has spoken about keeping Diana's memory alive for his children. But children also learn legacy by watching behavior. When they see their father visit a homelessness service or devote years to a national program, they see memory converted into obligation. When they see Princess Anne continue traveling and attending engagements in her 70s, they see a different lesson. Causes are not supported only while they are fashionable. Princess Charlotte may find Anne's example especially instructive. Anne was the daughter of a sovereign who created a substantial public role without being the heir. Charlotte is currently 3rd in the line of succession, behind Prince William and Prince George, and ahead of Prince Louis, because the rules were changed before her birth to end male preference for those born after October 2011. Charlotte's future is unwritten. She may become a working royal or choose another path. But Anne offers a model of influence built without proximity to the throne being the sole source of purpose. Diana offers the lesson of emotional courage. Anne offers the lesson of durability. William's task is to ensure that the next generation receives both. The pressure then builds toward an inevitable conclusion. The monarchy cannot preserve Diana's charitable legacy by freezing it in 1997. It must decide who will carry its different parts into the future. And the most credible answer is not one successor. It is a partnership of functions. So, what does it truly mean to say that William grants Anne the inheritance of Diana's royal patronages? It does not mean that Prince William has signed a decree transferring a documented list of charities to Princess Anne. There is no confirmed palace announcement establishing such an act. It means something narrower but more believable. William can preserve the causes most intimately connected to his experience of Diana, while recognizing Princess Anne as the senior royal best, equipped to guard the broader standard of service Diana helped redefine. The most specific evidence lies in their records. Diana was associated with more than 100 charities during her marriage. She used her position to challenge the stigma surrounding HIV and AIDS in 1987. She took William to the passage in 1993. She walked through the Angolan minefield in January 1997. William became patron of Centrepoint in September 2005. He became royal patron of the passage in February 2019. He launched Homewards in June 2023 as a 5-year program addressing homelessness. Anne became president of Save the Children in 1970. She represented Britain at the 1976 Olympics. By 2025, she was connected with more than 300 organizations, charities, and military bodies. Those facts create the real transfer. William inherits Diana's memory and personal mission. Anne inherits responsibility for ensuring that the royal principle behind that mission remains operational. Arrive prepared, direct attention toward the cause. Return after the first burst of publicity and continue long enough for the relationship to mean something. William does not hand Anne Diana's identity, he entrusts her with part of the burden. And Anne does not become Diana's replacement. She becomes proof that Diana's impact no longer depends upon imitation. That is the resolution hidden inside the title. The inheritance is neither legal nor exclusive. It is a working compact between two branches of the same family tradition. William protects the emotional line between mother and son. Anne protects the institutional line between privilege and service. Together, they prevent Diana's patronages from becoming museum pieces names and photographs preserved with affection, but separated from the people those organizations exist to help. For an audience that watched Diana's life unfold in real time, that distinction matters. A legacy is not honored because the royal family repeatedly speaks her name. It is honored when the work continues without requiring her presence. Nearly 3 decades after Diana's death, the question is no longer who can replace her. No one can, and no responsible member of the family should try. The more important question is whether the qualities she brought into royal service can survive. Closeness without condescension, visibility directed toward the overlooked, and the courage to enter rooms others avoided. William carries that inheritance as her son. Princess Anne carries the discipline capable of sustaining it. There may never be a ceremony announcing that Diana's patronages have been placed in Anne's hands. The truth is quieter. It can be seen in the causes William chooses, the engagements Anne continues to undertake, and the expectation that future generations will treat service as more than a performance. Diana opened doors. Anne has spent a lifetime keeping institutions moving. And William, standing between memory and monarchy, may understand that preserving his mother's legacy requires both. If you want to keep following where this family story goes next, you are warmly invited to join us as the responsibilities of the next royal generation continue to take shape.